Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
Oh boy, you're back. That's right. We only do audio only.
Oh, you only do audio?
Yeah. We don't do video. We're not sophisticated like you guys are over there on your deal. We just stick with the audio stuff.
Yeah, I was just having the conversation with Jacob McLean about that, and working on that.
On doing just audio only, or
Yeah, just doing audio. Yeah.
it's I don't know. I mean, I guess you get more people to watch your stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, but Reagan and I have found that the audio side, or at least through the phone and the normal podcast avenue, seems to be where most of the people are listening to our show. So they're not really, of
Yeah.
course, we just put an audio file up on YouTube, so maybe that's not very boring. It's pretty boring to watch on YouTube and nothing going on, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll eventually get a studio, big old fancy one like you guys got, but I doubt it.
I don't know. So to be real frank about that, I think you can do it pretty inexpensively in the sense of you can buy those slats and those sound things at Costco. You can buy those and you just kind of take a corner, like I'm going to do at the corner in my basement and have a couple
Yeah.
cameras down there and have Jacob or whoever else I'm going to have remote in and just take care of the podcast that way and do everything remote. The downside is if you have a bad internet connection,
Yeah.
it starts getting choppy. That's the problem.
Yeah, that would be the only issue. I was talking with, remember that story that I think Dirk wrote it on OPB about all the Republican podcasts. And
Uh-huh.
I was talking to him near the end of session. We were just BSing about his story and all that. And I said, well, he said, how come Democrats don't do it? And of course, he didn't answer that one. I said, Democrats don't do it because they can't do long form media because their ideas don't fit inside a 30-second soundbite. But I don't think that's what he didn't report on that one. But we were talking about them because they went to going YouTube live, which he said is not a lot of fun. They like it because it reaches a new audience, but it's pretty tough to do because you have to have a very steady internet. You have
Mhm.
to, then you have to go. They have to go exactly at a certain time on Thursdays now because you're going live. And I said, I don't know if they're getting any more value out of that, but
But I think they're able to control so when I was talking to some of the Dems, they're, I don't say upset with us, but they're like upset with their leadership that says, you have to go this way. These are the talking points and you can't deviate from them. This is our message, period. And their press releases have to be approved. All these things have to go through the majority office, and they don't get to have that free form like we get to.
yeah, well, I think some of the minority leaders would probably like it if everything went through their
You
office.
think?
They
Really?
just don't have control, right? I mean, they have control over everything, especially the leadership, because they can control everything, including the minority party to some extent.
Right.
But I think the free, I am going to have a few of the Democrats on. We've already, I think like Representative Choatson said he's going to come on. I got Senator Pham's going to come on.
Oh,
I'm trying to track down Lieber. She's running scared of me right now, but I'm going to get her on at some point. And even Wagner himself said that he would come on at some point. He wouldn't do it during session. And I was like, and now he's probably a little upset at, because we kind of hit him pretty hard. Not just him, but a lot of the Democrats on certain things. But I think they will. At least we try to be fair.
yeah.
We've had a few on that are Democrats, and I think we'll have some more on. But I'm hoping they'll come on and just be a little bit, and I'll be fair. I'll give them a fair shake on stuff because I really like to know what their take was on session and certain things priorities that they were trying to get across. Because even for them, it's, I wouldn't say it's as tough as it is for us, but it's still pretty tough for them to even pass pet project bills and things like that too, because they got to find the time as well. And there were some hurt feelings on their side there at the end of session too. There was a lot of people that were a little upset about not getting stuff funded or not getting their policy bills through the
Really.
finish line. You were there.
Uh,
You saw some of the crying that
I,
was happening
I
on the
saw, I
floor.
saw, I saw it all. I had a front row seat to that, buddy. The one thing I want to make sure we cover is recreational liability.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a
That's a
yeah,
that's a huge one.
let's go right into that one. That's kind of
Okay.
a let's just talk about that was a real bummer one that didn't finish. We couldn't get it done there at the finish line, but the recreational liability is such an important thing in a state that's based on tourism, and recreation.
Yeah, it's, Brian, for me, living in the district that has Mount Hood, and I've got three ski resorts. You've got Mount Hood Meadows, you've got Timberline Lodge, and you've got Ski Bowl. And this district relies upon not just agriculture, but it relies upon, the recreation opportunities. And it's just not the ski resorts, it's mountain biking, it's river rafting, it's guide services, it's gyms, and it's all these waivers that the trial lawyers have decided to challenge, and they were able to do it. And guess what? Now you can sue for anything. And when I try to explain it to people about recreational liability, it's like, the easiest way to explain it is, if the chairlift didn't get the proper maintenance it was supposed to have and it falls off, that's gross negligence.
Yeah.
But as a former snowboard instructor, if I taught you a certain way to snowboard and said, okay, you're not ready to go down the blue hill yet, but you're good on green hills, and you as a snowboard student decide, I'm going to go hit the pipe. I don't care. I don't care what the instructor told me because I think I can do it. And
Yeah.
then you ski or snowboard beyond your capabilities and you get hurt. That should be on you. Well, they now want to say, well, you didn't have somebody there. The signs weren't there saying it wasn't appropriate for you to snowboard there. Didn't have the questions, and it's just stupid, right? And it's like, come on, it's the trial attorneys just getting greedy, and they want to win a bunch of money, and they take 30 to 40%, and it's just a moneymaker for them. And so, I had the owner or family owner from Mount Hood Meadows on my podcast. We talked directly about this, and they held up $50 million worth of starting projects because they don't know what the insurance is going to look like for them. They were going to do $50 million worth of improvements through Mount Hood Meadows.
Yeah.
And now they decided not to because they got a letter from their insurance company that canceled them. Timberline's been canceled by the insurance carrier. Ski Bowl's been canceled. Willamette Pass has been canceled. And there's a couple other ones that have been canceled just in the ski industry alone. And that's when we're talking a $17 billion industry a year. $17 billion is brought in.
Yeah.
And the Democrats wanted to have, a $14.7 billion 10-year tax. And you don't even want to take care of a $17 billion industry. We want people to come to Oregon. It's a beautiful place to recreate. But yet you want the trial attorneys because they fund your campaigns. I'll say it out loud because that's who's behind this. They want to keep doing it. If you watch the committee hearings, they're all over it.
And what was the point? What was their main point for? Because I get what you're saying because I think it makes sense. Like if you're and I ski and I've skied, my whole life, and I taught my boys to ski one snowboards. Sadly, I lost one, but he
Hey, it's a
broke
good
his
sport right
wrist.
there, buddy. Good sport right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, right. The youngest one skis and he's really good. And of course, he does backflips and all this stuff, right? And my oldest boy broke his wrist snowboarding, right? He tried going too far, too fast, and of course on snowboarding they always say whatever you do, don't put your hands down.
Yeah, don't put your wrist
And
out. Yeah,
so is why I should sue because that's Ski Bowl's fault because they let my son go crazy and jump too high and go too far and too fast, and so therefore they're the blame, not my son who was a 17-year-old kid at the time making a dumb decision or just going beyond his capabilities. I can't imagine. If you go skiing or you go snowboarding, there's an inherent risk in that alone before you
right.
even start down the mountain.
Yeah. So we were skiing, a friend of mine, there's three of us are snowboarding, and we had a Kodak moment getting off a chairlift. It was at Timberline on the Magic Mile, and it slows down. And that when we slowed down, everybody kind of fell as they kind of came off the chairlift. But then next time we come back up after the Magic Mile out there, the person that was sitting in the middle had another Kodak moment, but they put their wrist down to break their fall. all their weight went on their wrist, and so their wrist sits at an angle, and that your top of your bone, I can't remember the name of it, but it got pushed back. You could see it when they took them to the X-ray. They had to put a whole piece of titanium in there, cadaver bone, and all that. That wasn't the ski lift's fault. That wasn't their operator's fault. That was we couldn't get off the chairlift, and we had a Kodak moment, and somebody got hurt. Nobody got sued.
How many times have you been wiped out by some other idiot getting off a chairlift, right? When you're riding up and you can tell they're super nervous and you're just like, oh, especially if you're on there, you're like, oh, please, just can you go right? I'll go left if you fall.
That is what I learned. I'll sit on the right side or the left side of the chairlift. All right, guys, which way are you going? Left? Okay, I'm going to go to the right. We'll just keep it that way because I have watched it and learned. It's like, I don't think so, man. I don't want to get hurt. I'm at 57 years old. I break a little easier, I think.
Did you grow up skiing?
So in Colorado, I taught myself to ski, and I got up to the ski resorts as soon as I got my driver's license. I just would go up to Winter Park and rent stuff and kind of figure it out that way. And then
that's where you grew up?
Outside of Colorado. Outside of Denver. And so I was mom and dad originally from Nebraska, and we lived outside of Colorado or outside of Denver. And then our school system was set up. You went 4 months off 2, went 4 off 2 because it was so crowded in these unincorporated areas. And so I would just always drive over to Nebraska and hang out on those 2 months that were off. And then if it didn't conflict with football, but then wintertime when I wasn't playing football, I would go up to the mountain, and the buddies would all jump into a car, cobble together $10 to pay for gas to get up there, and lift tickets were $15 a shot. So we have a good time.
Yeah, that was, I bought my boys, I bought it for myself, but I bought a Ford Excursion, and put some, snow tires on it because Vicky would be afraid that, the boys going up there by themselves. And so I bought them this Ford Excursion that basically was just, it's a steel machine. So I said, well, other people may not be safe, but the boys will be. Yeah. That's what they drive up to the mountain when they go. So it works out pretty well. I loved it as a sport. I grew up, growing up in the Portland area, we'd always go up to government camp or all those places. You do the small hills, and then you get better and you do do all everything to Palmer and the whole 9 yards. And then when I moved to Bend, I was like a total just ski bum. Like while I was working before Vicky and I started dating, I was 40 days a year, we run a bachelor and ski for 2-3 hours, right? And then you'd head to work, and it was a blast. It was something fun growing up. So, speaking of which, I didn't even introduce the fact that I'm sitting here with Jeff Helfrich. Reagan's out on vacation Bible school, so Representative Jeff Helfrich decided to join us and talk all things legislature and all those stuff. Jeff has done everything about almost everything you can in the legislature. That's why he's now going to run for the state Senate, because he's done the House. He was the House Republican leader. All the things you've won, you've lost, you won by a lot, you won by a little. There's probably seems like there's about nothing you haven't really done inside that House over the years, especially as that House seat of yours has just ebbed and flowed a lot from that kind of east to the west. It's always been kind of a weird House seat for me looking at that one, because you got the Dows with Gresham, which is pretty far apart in regards to, I don't know, representation. It just doesn't geographically align, right?
No, it does. A Democrat that's in Wasco is different than a Democrat in Lake Oswego, right? And there's the GOP party there in Wasco has done a really good job of getting more Republicans registered to vote than they are Democrats now. And that I think when they did the redistricting, that was going to be an easy win because Hood River was going to be the winning point of that. And I don't think when they did their gerrymandering, they really took into account what was left on the mountain and what was left in East Multnomah County or the west side of the district, which is Corbett and then Gresham. That's still very conservative out there. And it's, if you can pull in 34% of Hood River of your vote, you win.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? I remember that was in 22 when you decided to come back because you had a tough loss in 20, right?
82 votes, yes.
Yeah, that was 20. 82 stinking votes.
That was a third
Um,
party candidate. I guy still, yeah.
Oh man, I tell you, Anna Williams, and then so we go off and we start recruiting, and I'm spending my time driving around. Grew up in that area, so for me it was fun. That was probably one of the few. And then what was it like a week before? And you were kind of like, no, no, I'm not gonna do it again. Rematches aren't good, blah blah blah, right? And then all of a sudden, Anna Williams and what two other reps just decide like we're done, we're quitting.
Yeah, they didn't get the pay raises.
Yeah, and I remember you texting going, "This is a game changer," and I'm like, and we had a candidate, and I was like, "Shit!" And then at that point, what are you going to do? I remember talking to the candidate. I'm like, "Well, what do you expect the guy to do?" I mean, like, it's the reason why he lost is just left the race. So I don't know, and then of course he went on to pretty much wipe the floor of it there in 22, which was great, and now
Yeah,
and in 24, being the House Republican leader. I know that game, and so you spend all your time on everybody else's races, and probably not enough on your own. And that was it was probably a little bit closer than it would have been, I think, if you were spending all your time there. You would have easily
right.
pick up some more votes there, and also you don't spend as much money on your own because you're spending all your time trying to give money to other people. And it was, but now the Senate seat. So I'm kind of wondering what your thought is, and we'll go back to policy in a minute, but I just wanted to touch on you have announced, and then but you're kind of the House seat. How do you feel where that House seat is going to go and the Senate seat? Like,
So I think let's kind of step back to 22
yeah,
just for a second. I remember talking to you and talking at the time it was your wife, leader Vicky, and like here's where it's at. And you didn't lean into the race, and I appreciate that. And just I knew I was going to win, and I knew it was going to happen. I just put so much work into it, but that was a Trump year too, right? So,
yeah,
or no, was that no?
no,
Was that
no,
yeah?
not a
That
Trump
was
year.
it was an
23.
off year. Yeah, 23 is a Trump year. So that was an off year for Biden, and we won obviously and decisively. And then even in 23, with it being a Trump year, still I was behind for the first 10 hours of it, and then clawed my way back and won by like 16 or 1700 votes, whatever it was. But I think it just shows like when you like use when you were out recruiting and it's for the House Republicans and I was out recruiting, candidates matter, and it matters who's engaged into that. And so to the question that you posed was what's that seat? I think there's some good candidates out here that have talked to me about it, and it really you have to be dialed into the community and how do
Yeah.
people know you, and you just can't be because that first time in 17 I always felt like I was always behind because I didn't have a primary opponent and I didn't have my name recognition out there, and those things matter when you see signs up there, you're
Yeah.
knocking on doors, you're going to these meetings where somebody's been embedded in the community doing a little bit different stuff. And being a police officer was you kind of want to lead a private solitary life and didn't want to have your face out there all the time. And then you switch on and you end up being the state representative. It's a whole different game.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of, I mean, we've had a few runs there where we've had a couple of police officers run, but it's not normally a
Right.
movement for, cops to become politicians. They tend to not like the spotlight
Right.
for a reason, for the reason normally, because their job is to, enforce the laws, right? Not write them. That's not
Right.
their, so it's not a normal movement. I think with that seat too, which I find very difficult to do because like you said, they're not a Hood River Democrat. I mean, especially Hood River Democrats, that are there inside of, they're not like the Dalles Democrats even.
No, they're
Not
not.
like, and they're not like the Democrats you see outside of the outskirts of Sandy or in between Sandy and Gresham. And the same with the Republicans. So it's a very difficult seat to kind of wrap your arms around. And the only way to be successful is literally miles in the car. And
Yep.
because it's so many small communities, in between, I mean, the Hood River and Parkdale alone. I mean, the difference between those two communities is insane.
Oh, and
So,
Odell, right? Odell's right in being in
yeah,
the middle of those two. But you go over to Welch's up on Government Camp and all that part of the area up there. That's a
yeah.
different type of Democrat over there too.
It is. And I think that when candidates, and I think candidate quality, I'm glad you brought that up because it really matters when you're recruiting and, being that you've recruited, Vicky's recruited, I've recruited all of us, and it's difficult to do because you want to, when you find the first guy or the first female, and they seem good and you want to just be like, oh, you're just checking boxes, right? The hard part is like, will they do the actual work? I mean,
Right.
that's the hardest thing is because you don't know. And you think, oh, this person looks great on paper, and some do look great on paper, and then
Hmm.
yet they just do nothing. And you're just like, why won't you do something? And it's kind of it just drives you crazy. And then there's those people that do a ton and they look great on paper, and no matter what you do with money, they just can't get them over the finish line. And it's the most frustrating thing about campaigns, I think.
Yeah. So the thing that I really saw that was evident, you had a candidate in the metro area, we'll just kind of leave the names out of it, that looked great on paper, was going to be a good candidate, just the story that was there, and just didn't work really hard. And there, that was in a district that I think should have won, could have won it if the candidate would have worked hard. And then we had another candidate, neighboring district, that was probably the hardest working person I had seen. And they were out there doing everything they needed to do. They were soaking up every information that they possibly could, hook that candidate up with a representative to kind of be their mentor, to help them with fundraising and phone calls and all those things. And everybody was helping that person. And they still lost by the margin. And it just shows that the gerrymandering made a difference in all those stuff when it
Sure
came
does.
when the chickens came home to roost. That was the gerrymandering really messed things up. I mean, there's what we have 3 seats that are held by Republicans that should be held by Democrats right now,
Yeah.
right? There's three
Yeah.
seats, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And so it shows that the people are out there working. You look at Kevin Mannix; that's a strong Democrat district, but he holds it. I mean, he was a Democrat, now he's a Republican. He gives his reasons why, and you just got to go out and be willing to work and work hard. And you can't want to. I, as leader, couldn't want it more than the person out there knocking on those doors. You need to go knock doors. You got to go figure out. Go knock 50 doors and make 20 phone calls, whatever, right? Just go do
Yeah. Do
something
something.
and make phone calls. I mean, there's these different apps you can get, and I donate these different apps that you can do for getting donations and make phone calls and do your stuff. I mean, I couldn't tell you when I was working in that race in 22 to come back in, and I sat there and I made phone calls on my lunch hour. I got off early from work and worked with my employer at the time. Like, hey, I want to go to part time. These are the days I can work, and then I just focused on the race, and that showed. You have
Yeah.
to want it more.
It's what it takes. I think you were talking, well, we can always talk Amy Reiners, you were talking about that worked really well, right? Worked hard.
Yeah,
Wasn't that her in
yeah,
39? Yeah, she
yeah,
was she was an awesome candidate. Great
yeah.
worker, all the things. That seat is so tough, that Happy Valley. Like it always
Hmm.
pulls our way. It always like polling always looks good for us. I think that's why, I mean, what did Lori Chavez Dreamer run in that? Did she run twice, I think?
Twice, twice.
That one and just that one drives you crazy. I mean, because it just looks like it wants to be Republican, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't perform. And it's kind of annoying when you get a really good candidate and then they do everything they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
And then you can't really get them over the finish line. And nothing is more frustrating, especially when they're a really good candidate. And then you kind of want to just say, hey, next time you run, why don't you move to,
yeah. Once you move to this district here, you stand a lot
yeah,
better chance.
uh,
So
I
that's
think
that's the frustrating part. It is winnable. I mean, you guys, when Vicky was leader, you got some seats back, and
yeah.
I was one of them, and it's doable. It's just you got to have the. It comes down to the candidate, right? It comes down to them wanting it. How bad do you want it? I really wanted to come back, and I did it. But it's a lot of work. It is a
Yeah, I
lot of
think
work.
with that year with Kevin, you, Javity, Kramer, all four of those that were Democrat seats that were represented by Republicans. I mean, all four of you were very hungry to be in the office, and I think that does make a difference. That not only the hunger, but that like you said, even at lunchtime hour where you just can't like give me more phone numbers to call. I
Right,
always find that like when I don't hear from my candidates, if I'm doing consulting, that's when I know they're not working
right.
because they should be blowing me up all the time.
Yeah,
Because
it's like, hey, I get this questionnaire. What am I supposed to do with this from the
yeah,
union or from this person or that person or whatever? It's like that's what you get paid to help with and do those things and make sure you're running down the right answers, that it's not a gotcha question.
Yep.
And because a lot of people don't know about those questions or know those surveys and stuff, and you're doing your job and they should be asking about it instead of just sending something into Ballotpedia or whatever organization says, hey, let's give us something about you. And then all of a sudden it gets used against you. It's like, oh, come on, people.
Yeah, the questionnaires are kind of a pain in the ass. And I think that, hey, I was going to ask you, you were in the Air Force. I always thought you were not an Air Force guy. I always thought you were an Army guy, but what did you do in the Air Force? I know we've talked about
So
service,
I
but I didn't know
was
what you did.
So I went in and became. My dad was did the law enforcement role as air police back in the day when he was in the Army and then Air Force. But I ended up being law enforcement canine, and so my
Okay.
specialty was explosive detection. So
Explosive protection?
detection.
Oh,
So bomb dog.
okay.
Yeah.
With
So I got
dogs?
to yeah dogs.
Oh,
So I
wow.
did. I get worked with the EOD real closely. Did presidential details for sitting presidents, former presidents. Bush Senior, when he was on the campaign trail, was the advanced team with that in the Secret Service. And then when I was in the Gulf War, I did security protection for Bob Hope. That was super cool. That guy was funny, man.
Huh.
He is super funny. And
How
then
long were you in?
4 years. So I
Oh,
did 4 years, 7 countries of conflict and a war. I was in
yeah.
Honduras down there, and then I was in the first Gulf War.
That's great. And then coming out of there is when you went straight into the police
Law
department.
enforcement. Yeah, I knew I wanted to do law enforcement. What was kind of funny is you'd sit there when I was at Fairchild, sit there and watch the cops episodes and sit there and see Portland, Harry Jackson and those guys like that. And I just kind of did the shotgun approach and ended up getting hired by Portland because I thought I was just going to go back to Colorado and be
Yeah.
back there. And ended up getting hired in Portland. And I meet Harry Jackson for the first time, like, you're on Cops. My gosh, it was awesome to see. And then I ended up being on the Cops show as a couple episodes on the Cops show and stuff like that. And it was kind of a little deja vu stuff. But yeah, I tell you what, just that job is the ticket to the greatest show on earth. You get a front row seat to life. You see the best and worst in people, and you go make a difference. And they're
Yeah.
getting beat up right now. They're beat up in 2020, 21. The coppers, that crew field got beat up, but they're coming back. But it's still you see it in the state legislature that, oh, these cops are these bad things and this implicit bias stuff. I'm like, you know what? If there's somebody driving around that doesn't have their lights on and they're hanging around in the neighborhood, it's usually not because they're forgot to turn them on. It's either they're going to commit a crime, they've already committed a crime, or they're drunk. You know what? There's very few times that you run around with vehicle lights without them on because most of the vehicles now have automatic lights on them. So
Yeah.
there's a reason why their lights are off, and that's why you're going to stop them for equipment violations.
Yeah, it's very there. It's the rarity is the person who's like, "Oh crap, I forgot to turn my lights on. I'm sorry." Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the rare case. That's not the norm.
no, it's not.
I went in. I went in the army after you. So because that makes sense because you're a little bit
I was
older.
in '87. Yeah, I went in '87.
After the first Gulf War, I figured everything was kind of safe. So that's when I
Yeah,
went. Yeah, all I caught was a little thing in Bosnia, but that wasn't much of anything. So, but the first Gulf War was nothing like obviously the stuff after 9/11 either. So
no,
it was
no.
way. I remember talking to a lot of guys that were in the first Gulf War, and they said it wasn't that difficult, but it's still just being over there. Being overseas is pretty odd. I was in Germany. That's where I was stationed out of there, and we'd always, have the Air Force bases. That's why I always, when you always said you were a cop on the Air Force, at least you did something special. I always thought you were just the guys at the gate.
Okay. Now I'll go find bombs. No, where we were stationed at, we were a forward base, and I remember first night the war kicked off. We started taking scuds, and we had a scud that landed probably 100 yards from where our bunker was at. It's like, Jesus, Patriots are going off, all this stuff. It was pretty intense, and then we moved forward a little bit, and so it was a different thing. But Honduras is where I learned a lot of stuff down there. Went in the hearts and minds when I was in Honduras.
Hmm. With the legislature, we didn't really see a whole bunch of police bills this session. Like it seems like that was kind of a 2021 thing and a little bit of 23, but not much. I mean, mostly it was all that 21 and all the special sessions we saw with all the rioting and all that sort of stuff. But there was a few bills, not much this cycle. But do you feel like maybe that shift is changing, or do you think it's still there? It's just not front of the
It's
Democrats' mind.
it's still there because I've tried to bring some of those bills. It was Representative Lewis and myself bringing some of the bills back to give police officers more tools in their toolbox, they wouldn't budge on them. Even we put a pill press bill. It was myself. I had a bill, and then Representative Hartman from that Oregon City district, she had one too. A relative of hers died of fentanyl overdose, thinking they were taking a pill that was actual legitimate prescription pill, and it wasn't. And the Judiciary Chair Krupp was not having it because he told me, he goes, well, I put the bill in. I said, hey, you're going to get a hearing on it? He goes, well, nobody's come to me about it. And I said, what do you mean nobody's come to me about it? Well, I pride myself on knowing the DAs and knowing law enforcement, and none of them said this was a priority for them. We already dealt with this, and with 4002 when we recriminalized drugs, this isn't a priority. I'm like, well, it's a priority for me because they have only they being the lobbyists or those organizations can only have somebody ask for you, and so they asked me to help with this. And it's important because if you're in possession of a pill press and it's not registered, that is a huge thing, because then that's just another charge you can do to get these bad guys, get these drug dealers and these drug dealers and the manufacturers off the street and get them upwards in their sentencing. And, Nathan Vasquez, the DA in Multnomah County, was all for it, and the law enforcement was all for it. No. And it went to the Joint Committee on Addiction, and I thought it was going to come out of there, and they didn't do it. Brzezinski didn't like it, and Krupp didn't like it. I was like, oh, come on. It was just really disappointing. So it's still there. They don't want the tools to deal with these problems. They're still, you try to nibble around the edges, and they're stopping it. The Drug Policy Institute still wants to see, drugs in Oregon, decriminalized again. And it's just, that is wrecked our state. And, we got this, we put a stop to it. I know some people didn't like it, when we wanted to hang that around our colleagues around their neck during the campaign cycle, and something was going to happen. So we had to do something. And I think it was the right thing to do. And was it enough? No, we need to go back for more, but until we get in the majority, or at least until we get closer to even, people are going to still die from fentanyl.
Yeah, there's still lots of homeless people. There's still tons of people, hooked on drugs. Like fentanyl is still everywhere. I mean, you can't I think there's this mentality that you make one vote, you repeal one thing, and okay, problem solved, nothing to see here, move on,
Kick the can down the road. Yep, exactly.
Because they didn't want to give up the money, that's for sure.
No, he did not
I
want to do
imagine
that.
one did.
No.
Senator Anderson's on that. He's co-chair with Senator Lieber on that, the reinvestment of the money, basically the money side of it. So I've been staffing him on that, and it's it's over $1 billion.
It's a lot of money.
Yes. And the amount of nonprofits that are clamoring for that money to get their hands on it is
that Seeding Justice, all those nonprofits. I mean, there's a place, the Columbia Gorge Resolution Center out here in the Dalles is a very good model for getting people the help they need, whether it's the enforcement side of it or just the drug side of it, drug treatment side of it. And because they have over 16 beds, Oregon Health Authority said you're not eligible for this grant funding, so you're not going to be able to do the project. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And federal law says you can, and they say it's not. And it's like, look, we need bed space, and this is the only place in the region that can actually help juveniles too with drug addiction. And OHA is the bureaucracy, Brian, is just incredible. The red tape, and it's just the nonprofits are running this stuff, and where's the money going? There's no control over it.
No, well, we know where it's going. It's going pretty inflated salaries and stuff like that. And,
there's all kinds of stuff.
It's only a matter, and then they keep trying to unionize more and more of those nonprofit people or people within that space. So that's just going to keep getting worse, and it gets pervasive, and we're not solving the problem. At the end of the day, it'd be one thing if we were making a dent in the homeless populations and we were, really doing a lot of good for people, but I'm not really seeing any sort of upward mobility or change in the problem. It's still there.
So here is how far I believe things have slid. So when I first got hired as a police officer, possession of heroin is a Class B felony, pretty bad felony, right? And then crack cocaine, powder cocaine was all C felonies. Those got pled down to misdemeanors, but it was still a felony arrest. Whether it was conviction or not was a different story. But now it went to violate. Then they pushed it down to a misdemeanor. So everything was possession was all misdemeanor stuff, and then manufacturing was still at the felony levels, but barely. And then with 110, they went down to a violation. What people don't realize is there's a direct correlation with gun violence and when they made drug possession a misdemeanor. So gun violence went up in the city of Portland when the penalties went down for drug possession. And so you can still go buy a firearm, get convicted of fentanyl, heroin, whatever it was at a misdemeanor level, and you can still go buy a gun. Let that sit in for a second for people.
Wow.
But because it talks about felony convictions under the ATF forms when you go to buy your gun, right?
Yeah.
But you can't use marijuana within the last year. That's a no-go. But if you got arrested for felony or for heroin and it was just a misdemeanor level arrest, no big deal.
Huh.
And so the shootings went up, all that stuff went up because it's the gang dealers, the drug users, and all that stuff like that. It was all misdemeanor arrests. Oh, they're just misunderstood. They're just this, so they could possess guns and never get a gun charge against them.
Wow.
That is just, to me, is the most insane thing as a police officer. You want somebody that's high on drugs to be able to purchase a gun. What are they going to do when they don't have any money? They don't have a job. Going to go rob somebody.
Yeah.
For their dope because they're dope sick. Let that sit in just for a second. Your people and hear that. It's like, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't believe that there's, and you mentioned it earlier about Krupp and Prozansky, both the chairs of the respective judiciaries on both sides of the building there. They don't ever crack down on making crime more, I don't know, how do you word that, more, like we had 3 bills Senator Anderson put in because he sat on
more accountability. They don't want more accountability.
Yeah,
they don't
or
want
just more jail time or whatever.
Yeah.
He sat on the Lincoln County grand jury and like the last 2 months of 24. So he comes in and he's like, Brian, we got to do something about, sex predators and all the, all that sort of crimes. And I know nothing about judiciary. It's not my role. That's I know hardly anything. And I go, okay. So I started looking into it, and we put in really like the reporting requirements and all the people. And what did we find out? There was 18,000 people or so that aren't even
registered as sex offenders. Yep.
Registered sex offenders, right? All the stuff. Well, it seemed really simple that all you had to do was basically move people up, and they would force to get reported, right? They would have to get for, and of course we never got it. We did like 3 bills, met with people. Prozansky wouldn't even have a conversation with Dick on the floor. Dick would go over and try to have hey, what do you think about even having a hearing? He's like, no, it's not a problem. And that's basically what they say is it's not a problem.
And it's just where there was that bill that was passed for mental health stuff, and they wanted to supersite treatment facilities, residential treatment facilities. And we killed that bill in 23 when I was vice chair of housing. Representative Dexter, now Congresswoman Dexter, said she wanted bipartisan support on it. Rob Noce put it forward that you could supersite treatment facilities for drug addiction and other things that were there. Yeah. Well, sometimes if you're addicted to drugs, you've done bad things too. And one of those things could be, you could be a sex predator. And so she wanted to push it all the way through, or she didn't want to push it until knew she had support. And then I'm sitting in the office one day and she goes, well, we're going to push it through. I'd like to have bipartisan support, but I know it's not, but I think it's important to be able to supersite houses in these treatment facilities. I said, okay, just know that I'm going to put a minority report on it. And your members are going to have to take a vote saying they want to have sex offenders next to schools and churches.
Yeah.
Just know that's going to happen. And she just looked at me deadpan, like, oh, our first argument. I said, no, it's not. I'm just telling you what we're going to do. No surprises. And let's move on. And that bill just died. And then I went and turned and did it in 24. At the time, it was, it was still Leader Fahey. Listened to a radio interview I did, and they talked about, well, how do you treat these? How are you going to help with Major 110 stuff? I said, well, it's treatment facilities. So nobody wants it in their neighborhood. Why don't we put it in light industrial and light commercial lands where nobody's going to complain about it? It's not my backyard. And we did that. Well, then Representative Gamba, we passed it out of rules. And then he turns around on the Senate side and adds in putting it in residential facilities. And we killed that when it came back for concurrence. I'm like, are you kidding me? So they stuffed it in this other bill so you could just supersede them wherever you wanted. They still got it done. It took three sessions to get it done. But it's like, I really don't think people want to have a registered sex offender next to them in their residential treatment facility. Because as a police officer, I responded to those. There's some violent people in there
Yeah.
because they decide not to take their medications, and then the staff's running around trying to get the medications, and then they go to the street corner and get street drugs, and then they're back in their residential treatment facility. It's not secured, acting out, and they call the police. The police get in there, have to use force, and then all of a sudden it turns into a thing. And Lord forbid you use force, you handcuff them, and you get them, and they die because they got excited delirium. You could have done all your precautions, and you have somebody that died in custody, and then that turns into a thing. I mean, it just the officers get drugged through the grand jury process, even though they haven't done anything wrong. It'll change your career and your outlook on life.
Yeah, I can't imagine. But you're right though about people don't want the NIMBYs go crazy when you're going to put one, let alone a drug treatment facility in a neighborhood. That, let alone that. Now you're going to add in, potentially violent or sexual predators. Yeah, I don't think most neighborhoods are going to want that. And I don't know why the push is to do it. And I think is it just like pushing to normalize it?
I think it's pushing to normalize it, to getting people to feel like they're not different. It's just a problem that they have. And I remember being in a committee, and Disability Rights of Oregon was talking about these things. You can't do these things. Your implicit bias is coming out. All these buzzwords. And finally, I looked at them and was there giving testimony over the video testimony. I just asked him. I said, "So you're telling me it's a disability to be a sex offender? It's not a crime?" Dexter looked at me like, "I can't believe you asked that question. I'm the vice chair. I'll ask whatever question I want." And they couldn't answer that question. Well, they're not really saying that. So that's what I heard you say. Yeah. And I remember a couple of my Democratic colleagues looked at me and just kind of started shaking their head. You're right. That's what you heard. And it's just, they want to normalize it and just it's just fine. Everybody's just equal here. Like, no, you've done bad things. You need to be held accountable for that. Period.
There's a big difference between being a choice of being a sexual predator versus being in a wheelchair. Like there's those are not the same thing.
But they tried framing it that way until I called them out on it. They weren't very happy with me, but I don't care.
Well, you can't. I mean, that's why you have to ask the questions,
right.
because those things that's what gets by in the legislature is those things. Speaking of something that didn't get by, and you were intimately involved in it, transportation.
Yep.
I mean, you were, pretty much there from the get-go, or were there from the get-go on this thing, and then hearing everything, all the months that went down, everything. Maybe like I think everybody kind of knows what happened at this point. If you don't know, you're kind of living under a rock. I mean, everybody that listens to our show knows what's happening with transportation. But what is your take on why was ultimately it a failure? Do you believe? What was the biggest reason why it never went anywhere? Because
I think the framework got released, and there was just a lot of money. There wasn't stuff for people to chew on and look at early on. That was probably where it started. But then when they started talking about almost $15 billion over the next 10 years, that's a lot of money. And what did that look like? What do those tax hikes look like? What is that? The RUC, we can get into the nitty gritty of, the RUC and the weight mile stuff. But, when you're talking, 20-cent gas tax and all these fees going up and allowing for those fees to be the actuaries to actually happen where they can do it with indexing the price index. If cost of soft goes up, they can index it. They can actually by rule just raise revenue if they want to. And that's the legislative probably. That was my biggest hang up with that was allowing for that indexing. As cost of living goes up, they can raise the prices on stuff and without any oversight from the legislature.
Yeah.
That was I think that to me was a failure, but I think the way it kind of went through and, being part of those conversations, in those offices, certain things and trying to figure out, is there a path forward? I think there could have been a path forward, but it just, even at the very end, when they're trying to hang it around Republicans is saying you wouldn't allow a procedural vote to go. It's like, well, what was, you gotta have a plan, right? As a cop, I always had a plan. You got plan A, B, C, and D. And, that's just the way you got to think. And I don't think there was, a good, what was your plan A, what was your plan B, and what was plan C? Because you have to have that.
In the beginning of the conversations, was it kind of known that you're going to have to raise gas taxes? Was that kind of a given?
I think that was a given, like, hey, but that was a given to raise the revenue just to keep them whole. But where to fund the projects that didn't get funded out of 17, those past promises, that was one big hurdle. Where's that money coming from? They took tolling off of that, which if you're going to toll something, build a new road that you're going to toll to be on there. Don't toll existing roadways because that's not fair. You've already paid for it. And so there's that. I think the fees was another thing that was a big one, but ODOT has had a history of not spending money, and you had these DEI stuff that was being paid for and these empty offices and stuff. I know the Oregonian looked at some of the plans and said, "Oh, this is not the right figures here. You're off on these figures." But if all these other agencies are taking haircuts, ODOT needs to take a haircut too. And what does it look like?
Yeah, it makes sense. So there was in the beginning there was a desire like, okay, we know we're gonna have to raise fees. We know we're gonna have to gotta pay for it somehow. The gas taxes, obviously, because the cities and the counties get a portion of the gas tax, right? So that's super important to them, and it goes into the road fund, and there's some federal money all tied to. So gas taxes there's really not a whole bunch of other ways to fund the road fund.
The highway trust fund, right?
Yeah, except for to come at it with gas taxes, and every state has gas taxes on some level. So, and I think that made sense. I think obviously everybody really probably agreed on the road user fee stuff. Was that kind of one of those things? Everybody kind of agreed on that.
Full disclosure, I drive an electric vehicle because it's easier, and as much driving as I do, it's
a Tesla. It's nice.
It's nice. It works, but I'm not paying the same fee to drive it on the road. And so, how do we make sure people using EVs pay it? We need to make sure that happens, whether it's through registration or through tracking your mileage, which I'm not a big fan of. I don't want the government knowing wherever I'm at. And then there's I think the other part of that though is we have had this desire to get more vehicles fuel efficient, and those fuel efficiencies have caused the problem, right? So you have not buying as much gas, so you're still using the roadways, and there was that. And then the other part is when the Oregon with Disabilities won that lawsuit to put those cutouts and those curb outs and all the new sidewalks everywhere. It's my understanding, and I might get the numbers wrong, so I won't list a bunch of numbers, but what they did is they came up with, instead of it being projects, they just said, we are going to do so many curb cutouts and the wheelchair ramps. This is how many we're going to do. Not like, hey, this is a high use area where people have that need to use these type of disability ramps to get up there for mobility. So we're going to start here first, and then any new projects coming along, then we'll add those in as the roadways get in there and do that. Well, that money came out of the Highway Trust Fund too. That money should have come out of the general fund, not the Highway Trust. That's where a lot of money went to, was paying for that. Some of these ramps to nowhere.
Just disappears. Yeah, I know. You see them, and they'll put in all those ADA ramps, which, to your point, I agree. You could easily just categorize, your major crossroads or like do all the crosswalks first that have lights that everybody goes to, and then you can do the other ones as. A lot of times as buildings get remodeled and, a lot of cities and counties require you to do the sidewalks, right? So you could have easily just done it over time, but it seemed like they just sucked up all of that money, went to, every single corner.
And what I learned talking to the contractors, just not here in Hood River, but in Portland and some of the other ones, like if it's off a quarter of an inch, they got to redo it. Got to bring it up all out of the ground and redo it all over. A quarter inch.
Dang.
Just outside of tolerance level. I'm like, you make sure your level's working right.
Those corners are like 40, 50 grand a whack too.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
Do one little section. It's crazy. So, okay, so take me back. So you guys kind of walk through the transportation stuff. You spent 4 months talking about this stuff. They put out the framework. That was in April, right? Or no,
March,
early
April.
May. Or was it? It was kind of earlier. They put out the framework, I think, the original.
Yeah, original framework, yeah.
And then you guys start kind of walking through that, and you kind of, and then of course House Republicans, you guys come out with, you're like, well, we know we need to spend money. Of course, you're not going to say that, but you said, well, we know we need to spend money on roads, which I think if there's one thing that government should spend money on, it's roads,
right?
Infrastructure, right? Bridges, roads, I mean, sewer, water. I like us spending money on that stuff. I think that's good.
That helps
It's,
businesses and helps families.
yeah,
Absolutely. Goods
that's
and
what state
services.
government's for. It's not
Yeah.
there to, police every other thing you do, but it's definitely should be there to make sure our infrastructure is good so commerce can actually happen because they pay the taxes, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, we've got big river in separating a state. Kind of need good bridges going across those so they can actually haul commerce and goods and
yeah.
services across.
Which they toll that bridge of yours, all of those bridges right there. I think they toll, don't they?
They told the Hood River Bridge and they told the
Bridge of the
Bridge of the
Gods.
Gods. Hood
Yeah.
River was Hood River made the so Hood River when they were tolling it, they were taking part of that money to offset regular costs for the rest of the port. That's how they were kind of funding some of these projects. And then when they decided, hey, we got to build a new bridge, they raised fees, and those tolls now only go towards when they have to pay. The port has to come up with about $97 million on their own, and so they'll bond it, and they'll use those tolling dollars to pay back the bond. But then the other toll money goes into the bridge fund to keep the bridge up, so it actually pays for itself when you need to have maintenance or a
Yeah.
barge runs into it or whatever.
Let's
And
hopefully.
it's happened. It's
Yeah, I
happened.
know. I don't know how that happens. It's a lot of water there. I don't know how they can run into it.
I did.
They must be drunk. The Bridge of the Gods one is scary. I said this where Reagan and I were talking about it, and Vicky hates going over that Bridge of the Gods one because of the got the iron grate so you can see
You
through
look
it.
down, yeah.
Yeah, ooh, that one, and it's high. That one's high.
That sits up high, and it's a cool bridge. You know, there's we got them some money for some seismic to look at the seismic part of it, and then figuring out coming back in a couple of years, seeing what they can do to expand it so you actually can walk across it and have a bike across it because that's part of the Pacific Crest Trail, and that's a big tourism thing for Cascade Locks and having those people
Yeah,
that walk the trail all the way to Canada. So I mean,
well, that's
I've
cool.
walked across that bridge once. Just they had opened it up, and I'm like, this is not comfortable looking down at that far at the water. And you look at the grates between the grate, you look at the water below, you're like, that's a long drop.
Yeah, yeah. When you see the ground, that's not good. I'd rather be on concrete because then you
Oh,
can't see the bottom.
well, yeah, but I mean, I remember sitting there, you know, on patrol and we'd be across the going across the Fremont Bridge, and that thing flexes, and you have those trucks and stuff, and you have somebody that was going to be a jumper or whatever it is, and you're kind of sitting there on that bridge, and it's moving, the bridge moves a little bit, and you kind of look down to the water atop the Fremont Bridge, like, oh man, that's a long ways down to the
Yeah.
Willamette. Oh,
No thanks. All right. So at what point did you feel like there's just no way this transportation package is like, you guys are talking, you're negotiating, you're talking about stuff. I mean, I think
mhm.
you brought up the whole, Bruce Starr, you guys, the Senate, the House that was negotiating, you guys said, "Hey, what about this seating justice thing?" And I'm envisioning of you guys coming to them with like different proposals all the time or
Different ideas, yeah. There's just different ideas. Here's what we think. Here's how we can do this. Here, if
and
you
they just
raise,
kept saying no. Is that what, or no, that won't work because of,
I think when it came to, I know there's that climate protection program
yeah,
that Brown introduced, and all that money is going to go to these nonprofits, close to $1 billion worth. That if they would have created, and I know cap and trade can be very controversial within the Republican circles. If you're going to get that, if you want to keep it there, how do we keep that money coming into the state government? Because if there's $1 billion worth of money that's going to these strictly these nonprofits, how do you make it come into the state to where we're the ones writing the checks to pay for this stuff? Because that the climate protection program is going to happen unless we get a Republican governor in that's going to kill that executive order. And then if it doesn't, um, if it doesn't, that $1 billion goes to seating justice or whatever other programs are out there that are allegedly going to help with climate change. But you could use that $1 billion to fund projects. You could use it to fund wildfire. You could use it to fund rail and transit, and all those things like that. And you would not have to raise taxes on anybody. And
yeah.
it's a complicated, thing with what Washington does versus California and metric tons of carbon and how they figure it all out. And now, unless that once that program starts up and they start getting this money, it's going to be hard to cut that spigot off.
Yeah, and it seemed like there was a hot minute there where that was maybe catching a little bit of
There was some
steam.
steam. There was some steam, and then the environmentalists got wind of it, and they lost their mind. I remember talking to some of the leadership on the other side of the aisle, and they're like, well, we're getting all these bad emails and people are getting mad at us. I'm like, oh, welcome to being a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you ever get any email people mad about you about gun stuff? Well, no. All our people say we should have gun control. Yeah, okay. Now you know what it feels like when you guys shove gun control down our
Yeah.
throats.
But it would seem to me like the climate protection stuff going back into infrastructure and things like that, and or even just wildfire, you would imagine that that's what it fits.
It fits that program, right?
Yeah.
I think anything that was fuels related that was getting taxed on that carbon emission stuff, that goes into the highway trust fund. Then you can fund these projects. You could fund all those things. And if you just kept it executive order and just have us be able to get the money where it needs to go, that was,
Yeah.
but I think there's a lot of colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are like, well, our nonprofits aren't going to get this money. It's like, well, do you want to just have the money and not controls on it or what?
Yeah, basically, I think that's what it was. Because at the end of the day, 2025 didn't really look different than the framework
No.
originally put out. And I think that was their biggest flaw is they should have just put the damn bill out and to begin with. And because they clearly weren't negotiating, it was like they thought there was this process that they wanted to walk it through, and you kind of walked it to the finish line ultimately. But I think they just really messed up by not just putting out the Dash Amendment earlier, like putting out all the things that
There's politics behind politics, and I'll let other people talk about their story and their politics. But I've always been, and it, Brian and Vicky knows it. How do you get to yes on something? How do you fix a problem? And I was willing to sit down and how do we fix problems? Like you said, infrastructure is a job of the government, and we need to have good roads and good bridges. But we have a clear mandate from people that was not a priority for them. They would, cost of living is a priority. And so
Yeah.
how do you run more efficiently? Can ODOT continue to run with at maintain the level right now? What does it look like to maintain the level of service now, and then come back in a different session? And how do we figure out a funding mechanism for these things that people are willing to pay for?
It sure seems like it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm hearing potentially special session before July 31st.
They can't. Capitol's not open. The Capitol doesn't open up before October 10th, August 10th.
I don't know how they're going to do it. I think they're trying. I don't know.
I'm hearing 3-cent and 6-cent tax. I mean, you hear all the rumors, right? There's a rumor here, a rumor there. I think there's a 3-cent for ODOT to keep, so they don't have to lay anybody off. There's 3 cents in the gas tax, and I think there's 3 cents for cities and counties. Because cities and counties, they rely on it too. It's like we have to. I mean, I think we as a legislative body and the state have to look at how do we provide infrastructure? How do we our taxing system? How do we revamp that to actually make it work for the citizens and not just keep bloating government and making us being the handout to everybody. I mean, they had experts that came in at Senator Starr brought in for looking at ODOT and looking at the accountability portion of that. And they had great plans on how to do that. And those are still sitting on the shelf right there. And how do we implement those changes within ODOT? Because there needs to be some systematic changes within that organization.
And I think that's the bummer part of that, just to put a point on this transportation. I think that's actually the sad part is I think there might have been an opportunity to get some agency-wide changes that could have made ODOT a better agency, along with, getting new revenue, which is what they wanted, better roads, all the things. But there could have been some opportunity to add some accountability into ODOT that wasn't there either. And I think we missed that opportunity too. We'll see what happens. I don't know. We had a wildfire this last weekend here in Crook County, which was kind of fun. Vicky has been going to the conflag meetings and stuff, and you guys kicked it off there with your fire in Rowena. That was kind of that one's all calmed down and stuff, and now it's just
now they're into phase one of cleanup. And I took a tour of it. I was at the Emergency Command Center twice, and they did 2 briefings for me, and then we went on a tour last week. And it was devastating. And Shauna, surrogate grandma for her, lost her house, or her single wide that was there. And you would see 10 houses gone, and 1 house was stayed for whatever reason. Yeah. Didn't get burned at all. So there, 50, I think they said 57 structures were lost and 90 outbuildings. It's the biggest loss of structures that the state of Oregon's had. And my concern is because we sit in the National Scenic Area, which means there's a different layer of rules in which you can build now than you did then when those houses were put in. And so my hope is the Columbia Gorge Commission goes, you know what, let's go by the rules that they had then, not now, and just have good, nice homes. But I have a feeling that the Friends of the Gorge and some of these other, nonprofits are going to come in and start buying these lots up and not providing for housing that'll be there. We'll lose land to not have land for housing. And then, or these people from California, wherever else, will see that these properties are available. They'll come in and buy them and then build these huge McMansions out there, and we'll just lose an opportunity for housing. And we can't expand. We only have so much area in the National Scenic Area to expand for housing. Unlike Bend, where they just keep building and building and building.
True. Well, they can't go west. They can go east till Burns, but
yeah,
that is definitely a problem because there's only so many places you can build in the gorge just because of geography is just so difficult to do. What was the cause of that fire? Did they?
So it's under investigation. There's a lawsuit that's pending right now with the same law firm, I guess, that's suing over the tunnel fires in Washington. Trial lawyers. They think it's the railroad. The railroad's investigating it. I haven't heard what they think it is. If it is sparks, it's a couple different areas, and don't know. Kind of hold judgment. Just got to let the investigation work its way through to see what goes on. To that end, it's something happened. Whether it was a fire bug or it was an actual mechanical issue, I don't know. I mean, I remember during the heat dome, you had all these fires that were popping up at every place. And I think there's just heat. I just think there's fire bugs out there. I know there's people that were, that were involved with firefighting that decided they want to go be a firebug for whatever reason. So they were.
I'm kind of, I was actually the reason why I brought that up is I was having this conversation this morning with my sister. Actually, we were texting. She was asking me how the fire was over here, and ours was man-made. Couple thousand acres, probably about 3 or 4 miles from the ranch. And it was in that area where, kind of like Rowena or Juniper Canyon, is that where fire can just take off. If there's a wind event, I mean, it'll just go, but the elevation is I'm with you. I really think there's people out there starting these fires. I think there's people that want to see things burn. And I just kind of feel like there's because stuff doesn't just automatically ignite out of nowhere without lightning. That was the only thing you ever had when I was fighting fires outside of Doofer or in Doofer. Fires in Doofer, but we lived in Doofer. It was always when the lightning storms.
Hang out in Doofer?
Well, yeah, right there at the Forest Service office. Don't ask what Doofer can do for you, but what you can do for Doofer. I used to love it. Go down to the pastime all the time. Even when I was 18. Yeah. Before I went into the Army, I was fighting fires in the summers there. But we never got a fire unless maybe an occasional small campfire that somebody got out of control. But usually we were on it pretty quick. But you never had these random fires start. It was always lightning for the most part. And I just think it just seems like especially pre-2020, kind of leading up to that, there was just this shift in fires. And I just think there's a desire, because I think fires lay claim to the climate change hoax.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
It's drier now, things are worse now. And it kind of fuels that debate. And then it costs tons and tons of money. Plus there's a lot of money to be made in that world. I don't know if Democrats aren't really the ones doing the contracting, but it just seems like there's just a whole.
There's a bunch of unexplained fire events that have happened, and it used to be lightning strikes, like you said, but the other one was campfires. As your fire, Smokey the Bear, as your fire out, make sure the fire's out, and then it seems to be everything's along these railways, rail lines and stuff like that. Is there somebody out there lighting fire? I'm not being conspiracy. It's just. It's plausible. If it's possible, if it's possible, it can happen. Yeah. Is there somebody sitting there doing that, and the train goes by, and you actually have somebody out there trying to light that fire and blame it on the train, and then all this stuff that goes on. And I'm not trying to be conspiracy theory, but we do know there's people that are arsonists that are out there. There's firebugs that want to have fire.
Yeah.
Is this then fuel what you said with the climate change stuff? Because do we hear about it going other places other than the Pacific Northwest, fires like that? I mean, usually it's lightning strikes.
Yeah, it's just lightning strikes. Yeah, you don't really see it elsewhere, and
Well,
the
even
train
out, even
tracks
in,
haven't moved. They've been in the same spot since they laid
yeah.
them down.
So like when out in Eastern Wasco, they had that fire that happened in the wheat ground right around during harvest, right?
Yeah,
I think that was a lightning strike that decimated that area in the crop. That happens back in Nebraska and Colorado too.
yeah,
Or it's you have a vehicle that's sitting there idling in stubble in the wheat in the stubble, and that gets hot, causes embers, and starts smoking and starts a fire.
yeah.
I mean that those things happen, but
Very rare.
It's very rare though, right?
It's not this like you can get. I think what everybody usually has, though. What do you call it on our apps, right? That shows all the fires, the
Mm-hmm.
wildfire
Yeah.
app. Watch duty, yes. Thank you, Vicky. She's listening to us still. But if you pull back and look at the fires in the Northwest, they're all over the place. And it
Yeah.
does make you wonder why, because we haven't, it's been, because we had the lightning storm that came through last week, and that hasn't been, we had just a couple of little smokes that came out of that. Usually that's what I did when the Forest Service happened. We'd all be on duty when you get a lightning strikes come through, and we'd all just be out there. The lookout would tell you, hey, we got one, there's a smoke, and boom, boom, boom. We get them out in no time. And now it just seems like they're busting up more and more. And I think that should be one of the bills we should do as Republicans and is up that crime of arson for
Oh yeah.
wildfires. You
Oh
know?
yeah. I mean, it's so if you look at in 2017, the Eagle Creek fire, that happened from a kid throwing a smoke bomb or fireworks, whatever it was. It was a tinderbox. He had a moment. His life is ruined forever. He's never, he's not going to be able to pay any of that back. But that was a man-made fire.
Yeah.
And look at the damage it caused. I mean, they saved a lot of structures. I mean, even saved Multnomah Falls, right? But still, they couldn't go and fight that fire because it was in the wilderness, the wilderness area. And so it's man-mades happen, but that happened there. That's a definite, oops, probably shouldn't have used that smoke bomb
Yeah.
or whatever it was. Bad on him. It caused a lot of damage. But these other ones they're not explainable. You can try to blame it on the train. And what I didn't know is talking to the different rails, the Union Pacific and Burlington Northern, they have cameras on those trains that watch all that stuff to see if there's sparks and things like that. And so you can review the footage.
Yeah, of course. Well, probably for liability reasons.
Liability, right? Yep. Damn trial lawyers soon, right?
Yeah, there we are, the trial lawyers again. I'll have to put that in our title. Trial lawyers are the worst, the bottom feeders of the world. Hey, I won't keep you much longer. I just want to ask you about going into 26. What's kind of your take with the Trump midterm? And I mean, you ran in 2018, so you ran in the first Trump midterm.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah,
because you had Kavanaugh. It was abortion was front and center. You had Kavanaugh on every TV you're knocking on and all that. And that's where I felt I was behind. And when I felt I was behind in that, I think this is going to be a different year when it comes to Trump. Now, I mean, you're going to have your haters no matter what, but if in fact the tariffs are showing that the Treasury is getting more money coming in, our economy is getting better. It shows Republicans can govern and just not say no and like, here's how we can govern.
yeah,
I think that helps our cause because you can't be the party of no all the time. You have to be the party of how do we fix a problem?
I agree. Yeah, and I think Republicans sometimes have been the party of the blaming in Oregon.
Yeah,
They've
in
been the
Oregon.
party of the blame instead of the party of ideas, and we should be the party of ideas, and have a little bit more of that. I'm with you. I don't think it's gonna. It doesn't feel like 2018. You kind of felt like 2018 had, and you're right, the Kavanaugh thing. Of course, we got a year to.
Well, there's a year. There's always
18
time
months.
for something
Yeah,
to happen, right? I mean, but
yeah,
he hasn't gotten us in any wars. They took care of business in Iran. You're watching. Here's what's interesting, Brian, is the news media is not showing the daily riots that are happening in Portland along the ICE facilities.
yeah,
Those are a daily event. They're down there causing problems and misbehaviors, but they're not publicizing that. And I think some will say, well, they just want to give them airtime, and that way that people don't come down there and do it. No, I don't think the city of Portland wants any of that, and the news media wants any of that out there to show that this mayhem's happening. They have these same protesters out there doing stupid stuff, and that the city of Portland, the what is it, Intel just laid off 2,400 people.
Yeah. Well,
Big. It was going to be
3,000.
like 500. There's going
Yeah.
to be 500 now. It's 2,400 so far. You've got Gen Weld out in Southern Oregon, the window manufacturer. They bailed. You've got Keene's bailed. How many of those sawmills have been gone?
Yeah.
All those things. And so the doom loop is just not the Portland doom loop. It's a disease that is spreading across Oregon right now.
Yeah. Well, and sadly for us, I mean, so goes Portland, so goes our state, right? And so
Yeah.
when they just start blowing it up, it just really affects the rest of the state. It's pretty dramatic too with what it does. And I don't know. I mean, as long as the conversation is about the state of Oregon, I think we look pretty good.
Yeah.
If it becomes about Trump, I mean, think about what he's done on the border. I mean, he's like completely fixed the border. Like,
Yeah. As of right now, they've got the lowest illegal entries that they've had on record.
yeah,
They're deporting people left and right. I mean, you've got my congresswoman, former chair of housing, going down to El Salvador trying to go see a convicted. Well, he was a gangster, and then on top of that, he's human trafficker and stuff. So it's like, go fight the good fights, not these. Go win the PR battle. And I said it to her, but when she dropped the F-bomb on national TV about Trump, I'm like, what are you doing and why are you doing that? That's not.
yeah.
That's just we don't. What happened to trying to just figure stuff out? But anyway, that's another story. But it's just disappointed there. But the other part is as long as we keep to the issues, I think we do pretty well in
I don't,
in this
and
next
Maxine
cycle.
Dexter was pretty. I mean, you worked with her for a while, and
Hmm.
I've known her for a while, and it's like that is not the Maxine Dexter I knew. And she shows up there, and would she run at AOC and just turned into
Yeah.
the crazy train or something? Or
Well, so
Jayapal?
if people look back a little bit, because Jayapal was here, her sister's here in Multnomah
Yeah,
County, she beat her, but there was the guy that was part of the DNC. He was the vice chair of whatever was going to be fundraising. And he basically came out and said, these old Democrats that are in these safe seats need to raise money and go out and do their job. If they don't, we're going to primary them. And then the new ones need to go out and, if they're in a safe seat, you need to go out and take care of the marching orders. He left. He put in 100,000 of his own money in and left. But it was about a week after he said that. That's when Maxine and that other group of people started doing that. I'm like, oh, that's where the marching orders came from with that guy right there.
David
The
Hogue.
money.
David Hogg.
Yeah.
I think it's Hogue, but they call him
Oh,
Hogg. I think it's
yeah.
kind of funny, but
He's not there anymore. So
yeah, they didn't last very long. Well, I'm with you. I feel a little. I'm hoping that we're on because the Trump wave just didn't hit basically the Rockies, right? I mean, it kind of stopped somewhere around there, and it kind of petered out in Nevada and never really made it to Oregon. And we always tend to be a little later on those curves, like a social shift. I mean, granted, we are still the left coast, don't get me wrong, but I don't think, we didn't get the wave in 24 from the presidential lift like they did in Michigan and Wisconsin and, Pennsylvania and some of those areas. It didn't necessarily trickle down to the state legislatures too much either. It was very congressional, very federal, right? And
right.
so I'm hoping that we see the economy continue to keep coming back. And then I don't know if that hurts or helps Republicans. I think a good economy with Trump at the lead does show people that Republicans can govern. We can't just, we don't have to just be naysayers and all the things like government. There's a role for government, but our role for government is different than a Democrat's role for government.
Right.
We're saying roads and bridges and infrastructure and then get out of the way. And they're saying, no, universal health care. Um,
So when sitting on transportation and sitting in some other places in this other spaces and listening to my colleagues across the aisle, I'll just talk, Senator Meek, right? He took some heat. He wasn't going to vote for that tax package and all that. But I remember looking at him and I kind of commented to him and said, here's a registration to become a Republican because you sound like a Republican right now and not
Yeah.
wanting to tax things and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And there's some of those swing moderate Democrats are like, no, we can't do this stuff. It's not affordable. I'm like, where are you coming from? Because I know you. It's just like during when we were dealing with 110. Brian, was all of a sudden the polling showed we have to deal with this, and then all of a sudden our colleagues across the other side of the aisle became pro law enforcement and pro enforcement. Like,
Yeah.
where did you guys come from? They ebb and flow with what the polling says,
This is true.
and that they just have a good machine that gets out there and does it right. They've got the SCIUs of the world and whoever else is out there funding all these candidates, and they can use all their money and their resources to go do battle.
Yeah, they sure can. I don't know. We'll see. Well, you're going to be in the fight. I know that. I think you're a fighter. You're not somebody to just sit on the sideline. So
No,
I think, it'd be great to have you in the Senate.
love
Uh,
to be over there.
with,
It's
with,
you get
with
it. Well, it's what's it's interesting about the Senate versus the House. What I learned, Brian, is it takes at least 3 sessions to get good policy work done.
yeah, it does take a while.
And just to get good policy work done to build those relationships. But the other side is, though, you got bigger offices, bigger windows. You can fall asleep on the couch. You guys that's a little older on that side over there, you can get little more naps and stuff like that. So
Yeah, you'll help bring the age down a little bit more. So you can keep that going.
yeah,
I think losing Senator Weber is, that's going to bring the age down alone. But I think, it's probably good too because the Senate tends to. I don't want to say it's good. I mean, it's a bummer that we lost. I love Senator Weber. She's one of my favorite people. There's some good people that we're losing because they walked out. But the Senate, I think you can do better policy work too because you only have five people on a committee instead of
right,
12 or 14 or what have you
yeah,
that you have on the House, and so there's only 2 Republicans, 3 Democrats. So the reality is as the vice chair, you can kind of really shape a lot more policy in the Senate. It still has to pass both chambers, but I think there's some better opportunity, especially for seasoned representatives like yourself that know what you're doing because you don't get training wheels in the Senate. This is the like you're when you come to the Senate, you're supposed to know how to file a bill and how to work your own bill. You don't get to show up and just ask questions because staffers over there, we all kind of like, yeah, you should know what you're doing. By the time you get to the Senate, you should know what you do. You don't need as much staff to kind of help you figure out how to get an appropriation for your project. Like,
right,
go figure it out,
yeah. Hey, you can get it figured out. Talk to this person, talk to that
Yeah.
person, talk to L Pro or talk to LC and all those things. It's just like with Vicky and myself being former leaders in the House, like we know how to navigate the building.
Yeah.
It's about It's honestly it's about relationships.
Yep.
It's not
And
it's
knowing
not
how to
throwing
build
grenades
even
all
the
the
new
time.
ones. It's not just because you guys have all these relationships from all these years. You just know how to build them. It's,
Right.
because you're always going to have new people. So it's really just knowing how to build those relationships. Anthony Broadman, was a brand new, skipped the House, went right to the Senate. And, Broadman's turned out to be a pretty decent senator. And it was because he didn't mind asking the dumb question.
Yeah, he'd ask questions. He wasn't
Yeah.
afraid to ask the question.
And he's like, "Oh, and he would just be like, "Oh, I'm the new guy," and I thought that was I didn't think I'd like him. It turned out that I actually like him, which is kind of a bummer because he's a Democrat, but
Well,
but
he's
he's
on
been a
pub
good
sub with me.
senator.
He's been on pub sub, and we'd sit there and have conversations. And after working the Capitol, we'd say, "Hey, let's go grab dinner or something like that." And
Yeah,
we have really good conversations. That's what it's about. I mean, we can talk about the relationships just with the Republicans that we have, but it's the other side of the aisle too. Those are how those things happen, and whether it's always good to know who the co-chairs of the Ways and Means are,
yeah.
and play nice there, right?
Yes, that does help. Yeah, you know how to do that. Well, I think the Senate is a good spot for you. I
Yeah,
hope to
thanks.
see you there. I hope that you continue down that path. I really think that the people in the Senate, I think you would jive well with too. I mean, you have good relationships with those folks. I mean, you understand your communities. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm sure there's more to come where you're still, 10 months away from a primary. Lots of things can change. We got a governor's race I was going to ask you about the governor's race, but I think we kind of covered what 26 is going to look like. But because I think that's really going to be telling if we need a good governor candidate, I really want to
Hmm.
make sure that somebody is really talking about the local issues And if we don't have a good governor candidate, I'm afraid that it'll become more about Trump versus the governor being able to beat the drum, talking about the failures of Democrat policies from the leadership over the years. And that really helps us with the
That's a down ticket. Down ticket really helps us. And, there's, you hear different rumors in this, and it's not my story to tell who are may or may not be, but I think there's some top of the ticket candidates that can help us and actually try to win, because campaign finance reform kicks in, and there's a lot of moaning and groaning, and that kind of came through. But what we were looking at to begin with those ballot initiatives was not good, and so now I have to figure out how to navigate that. And this is really the last session or last campaign cycle to be able to raise money, raise 20 million, 24 million, or whatever that last governor's race that the last Republican nominee, which was Representative Drazen, raised like $24 million or something like that. And you're going to need to be able to raise that kind of money.
Yeah, you really do. And I think, you're senator, that Senate seat, Daniel Bonham, I've said many times on the podcast, he should run for Boley. I think Boley he understands the issue better than most.
He's his resource, just to listen to him and how he speaks and his knowledge, he's probably a very well-versed, and if he was a bully commissioner, watch out. There'd be some changes happening.
Well, and she's corrupt. And I mean, Nigel's written many stories on it on Willamette Week about how she basically just repays the unions for, them putting her in there. And I think it's a seat that it's a non-affiliated race. I mean, granted, Bonham would be tagged as anybody will be tagged as the Trump or Republican. But I just kind of feel like you can make that case that business climate in Oregon, especially with, like you talked about, all the layoffs and everything happening, like we need some change. We needed some change in direction there. And I think that's a statewide race where I just don't know if he can raise the $20 million. He's got to make the case that OBI and all these industries, that whoever's left has to fund it, and fund it on that level that of a $15-20 million race. So he or somebody else can make that case.
He would know more than he knows, as much as, when it comes to me and the ag stuff here, just how it affects just our labor force here and what they try to do, and how all the regulations they lay on our cherry growers and our fruit growers and the farmers and stuff like that. It's just horrible. They don't care. That bully director doesn't care at all.
Yeah, I hope he chooses to do. I mean, he's rumored to maybe look at governor too, so that'd be interesting. I think that Boley is a more natural fit for him. I hope he doesn't look at like U.S. Senate and try to take on Merkley or something, because I feel like when you get into that nationals, now you're talking about Trump, and I think that's probably not a winning scenario. Plus, the federal races are way harder to raise money for, because that per maximum per person thing is pretty tough to find.
You're always on the phone. You're always on the phone.
Yeah, I know. Well, regardless of what you're running for, you're probably always on the phone. So, well, enjoy your summer. Hopefully you and Sean and the kids will all have a good summer. I'm sure they probably like having you home. It's kind of fun.
Yes, they do.
Just be home.
I was kind of figuring out the hours, but those hours were, I leave on a Sunday night at 4:00 in the afternoon, and I don't come back till Thursday night at 9:00 at night. And and then I'm there from, wake up with the kids on a Friday, get them to school, and then turn around, Saturday, spend with them at whatever event we're at, and then back to Salem again. That's kind of how the road trip went.
And it's no easy way for where you live from Hood River, because you got to go around the Horn. There's no easy way to hop over to Salem. It's almost as fast as driving from Prineville.
If it wasn't winter and I had an airplane to fly, I mean, I had an airplane, I sold it, but even if it's wintertime, it's icing and all that other stuff flying across the mountains. Is the best thing to do in the middle of the winter.
Couldn't get Owens to swing by and pick you up, huh?
Yeah. No, I sold my airplane. It's only a 45-minute flight from Hood River, but still you're crossing a lot of country that a lot of things can go wrong.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, thanks a lot, Representative Jeff Helfrich. You can find him on his podcast, Back to Basics with Jeff Helfrich, right? You find that on wherever you get your podcast.
Spotify, all that.
And then on X is where I follow you. I'm sure they can find you on Facebook, but Jeff Helfrich OR. At Jeff Helfrich OR on X. You do a good podcast. I like listening to it. So keep it going, and thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Brian. Take care.
Marble halls today. Got a bill, I wanna make it sway. People talking left and right, but we're gonna do this thing tonight. Oh, yeah. Time to make a move. Can't afford to lose. Got the votes to prove what we're gonna do. We're dancing back and forth on the Senate floor. La, 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 yeah. Moving bills through an open door. Round and round until we score. This is what we came here for. Dancing on the Senate floor. Representatives and senators meet, trading words to find the perfect beat. Committee hearings all day long, till we finally sing the same song. Oh, yeah. Amendments flying high, watch them pass on by. Gotta give and try, make this bill fly. We're dancing back and forth on the Senate floor. La, la, yeah, yeah. Moving bills through an open door. Round and round until we score. This is what we came here for. Dancing on the Senate floor. When the votes align, and the count is right. Feel that Oregon pride, as we pass it tonight. We're dancing